Hello and welcome. You may have heard of Admiral William McRaven, Navy SEAL. He shares his expertise, his wisdom in what I would describe as the area of self-improvement. And one of the things that he talks about is the requirement, the need to make your bed. When you get up in the morning, make your bed. To paraphrase him, one of the reasons is that you're task directed right away and you overcome this particular thing. You make the bed. And that can set us up to then tackle other things that we can then overcome, and that can become a habit. And I believe that that's an example of helping us, if we follow that advice, to generate more self-agency, causal agency in our lives. And that's really important. He suggests that when we do the small stuff, we get better then at being able to tackle the big stuff. Someone else who's in the public eye who talks about tidying is the clinical psychologist Jordan Peterson. And he suggests that, again, I'm paraphrasing, that if your life is not quite as you would like it, look at your room, look at your bedroom specifically in the first instance. And if it's cluttered, if it's untidy, tidy it, declutter it. Because that's a reflection of your thinking, potentially. And once more, I think it falls into that area of self-agency, causal agency, overcoming something, setting up a bit of a cascade, a habit that can allow us to tackle those other things in our lives. And those two eminently qualified individuals, who are qualified in different ways, of course, are not alone in talking about the need to tidy, to declutter. But why is that important to us? Well, maybe us. Some people, it's not important to, but if you're one of those people like me who is okay with a bit of a mess here and there, particularly from time to time, I don't have to have the chair sitting at the table at exactly the right angle. I don't absolutely freak out if someone puts a cup on a plate or a tabletop or a coaster that was the wrong one. I'm not like that at all. But there is a level of untidiness, of clutter, which can begin to make me feel stressed, really quite stressed, and defocused. So if that's you, then you may be interested in exploring why it causes us or can cause us some stress. And by the way, if you do like the place bleached and you think the chair is at the wrong angle and you've got to go and sort it, you may also find this of interest. I'm not excluding you from this conversation. I'm just saying you don't have to be like that. You may just be one of those people who there's just a threshold, and beyond it, I need to do something about it. It may even make you quite irritated. So to help us do that, let's access a couple of articles. This one, why mess causes stress. 8 reasons, 8 remedies. As usual, I encourage you to, if you're interested in any of these things, these areas, to do more reading, do your own research. And I'm just going to go to the overview of these 8 things. So number 1, clutter bombards our minds with excessive stimuli, visual, olfactory, tactile, causing our senses to work overtime on stimuli that aren't necessary or important. Absolutely. Sometimes I can switch off from it, but other times it feels overwhelming. It's like jangling energy almost for me. Clutter distracts us by drawing our attention away from what our focus should be on. Absolutely. Now, caveat to that is I know some people, they like a creative space and it can be cluttered, and I can be like that as well. When I'm working on a project, I can have all sorts of things lying around, and I find that that's useful very often because I'll get an idea and think, where's that thing? And I can go and grab it and connect it to this other thing, or whatever it may be. And yet I still need that to be tidied at some point. So one can have creative spaces that have more clutter than other areas, but I think that's different for many of us because we go in with the intention of creating, and part of that creative process can be an element of disorder because we don't want to be thinking along tram lines, for example. But still, I would suggest, certainly for me, there has to be an element then of tidying it up. It's almost like getting rid of that and then starting again, because otherwise that can in of itself stifle creativity, in my opinion. And then number 3, clutter makes it more difficult to relax, both physically and mentally. Yeah, I would agree with that. I can switch off from it, but I find it easier to relax when a space is more streamlined, put it that way around. Not utilitarian, not without soul, not without warmth. That's not what I mean. Clutter constantly signals to our brains that our work is never done. Yes, definitely. And the flip side of that is you'll probably be aware when you go and do something, and maybe it's tidying up an area, maybe it's painting, maybe it's building, that great sense of satisfaction and a bit of order back in our lives can cause us to relax, certainly can cause me to relax. So when I see things that need to be done, well, it has that sense of, well, we're not on top of any of this. Well, this is wrong. Oh my gosh. And one can feel potentially also overwhelmed. Clutter makes us anxious because we're never sure what it's going to take to get through to the bottom of the pile. So connected to that last point, absolutely. Can we ever, in fact, get to the bottom of that pile? Clutter creates feelings of guilt. I should be more organised, and embarrassment. Yeah, it definitely can cause embarrassment. You ever had that happen? Somebody comes in to your abode and you're going, there was a little tornado that swept through the house. And actually says it, especially when others unexpectedly drop by our homes or workspaces. And workspaces, I'd have to say as well, it can be the same. And I know some people are different at work as they are compared to being at home, for sure. But certainly, I'm the same in the workspace as well. 7, clutter inhibits creativity and productivity by invading the open spaces that allow most people to think, brainstorm, or problem solve. And again, from my perspective, I think that's what I was saying, that once you've had that creative process and it's finished, something is there, clear it away so you've got that blank slate again, I think is important. And so if you go in and there's already clutter and you're trying to be creative, it can cause you to not only go down the wrong route, but can really stifle that ability to generate ideas. At least, that's me. And then number 8, clutter frustrates us by preventing us from locating what we need quickly, e.g. files and paperwork lost in the pile or keys swallowed up by the clutter. Yeah, absolutely, and I've experienced that. Paperwork I couldn't find, and indeed keys. So let's then look at this next article, 5 reasons why clutter disrupts mental health. I'm not going to go over each of the 5 reasons because, again, have a read if you're so inclined. So, number 1, low subjective well-being. Living in clutter impedes your I couldn't even say it, just thinking about clutter, you see. Your identification with your home, which should be a retreat from the outside world and a place to feel pride. And I think that's so true, that it's the cave in many ways, isn't it? You want to come in, kick off your shoes tidily, put them away, and relax. So we identify it as a retreat. But if it's cluttered, what are we identifying it with? Chaos. Somewhere that can make us feel slightly uneasy. So that's not good. That's not healthy. As we see in the University of the New Mexico study, which was mentioned in this article, which I haven't covered because, again, the video could get too long. Having too many of your things in too small a place will lead you to feel that your home environment is your enemy, not your friend. For sure. Maybe enemy's too strong, but certainly it's not a place that you can fully relax in my opinion. And then we jump to number 5. Less efficient thinking. Mental clutter is a state of mind in which you can't inhibit irrelevant information. And that's linked to one of the points in the other article. University of Toronto's Lynn Hasher proposed a number of years ago that mental clutter is one of the prime suspects in the cause of age-related memory losses. Her research today Amer et al. 2016 continues to support that proposition, which is a little bit scary. So we should probably delve a bit more deeply into that. If you're unable to get through the material clogging up your neural networks, so the theory goes, you'll be slower and less efficient in processing information. In other words, there's so much noise. Remember I talked about the reticular activating system? If you haven't seen that, I'll maybe put a link in this video if I can. But that could be worth a look, because I think this also talks to this as well in a different way. As a result, you'll be incapacitated when it comes to short-term memory tasks and even in longer-range mental exercises when you have to come up with information you should know, such as names of people that you can no longer find within your disorganized repository of knowledge. Now, I have to say, this doesn't mean to say if you are living in a bit of clutter that you're going to have memory issues. No, it doesn't. But would we want to risk it or perhaps tip the balance somewhere? And essentially what that's saying is that there's just so much going on, we've got so much to process, that it is harder to sieve out the things that we do want to access when we want to access them. Again, according to at least one study. Streamlining seems to have its advantages then, not just as a housekeeping tool, but as an essential process for maintaining your happiness in your home environment and at work. At the same time, cutting through the clutter can benefit your physical health and cognitive abilities. Start getting out that trash bag. Oh, we've gone on to what to do about it, which is fine, because that is where we're going to go. Start getting out that trash bag, whether virtual or physical, and you'll soon feel better able to enjoy your surroundings while you think more efficiently and cleanly. And so, with that as a prompt, let's look at another article, which is this one. So, key takeaways. Again, there's more in the article that you could read if you're interested. So this is to help us declutter, to get tidier. Schedule specific cleaning times and limit the tasks to a designated time frame to make cleaning more manageable. It's a really good idea. And you can imagine that if things are confused, there's a lot of clutter, that in of itself can be hard to do. So that's one way we can cut through that noise. Start small by tackling one room or task at a time. Definitely make your bed. And enlist the help of others to make the process less overwhelming. That, if you can possibly do that, is so beneficial. I've been lucky enough relatively recently to have people help me with a lot of stuff that I needed to get done in terms of tidying, cleaning, clearing out, etc. And it's a godsend. Crank up the music to make cleaning more enjoyable and disconnect from the internet to avoid distractions. Definitely disconnect to the internet. That's one of the issues, and I think it's one of the issues for many of us, that the clutter can build up, but we're so hooked, the anticipatory dopamine chase is on. And we're not doing those things that ultimately, if we approach them in a mindful way, are beneficial in of themselves, to do those things that are so-called mundane, that are physical. I'm not sure about cranking up the music. I mean, each to their own. I have done that as well. It can work, depending on the music. Begin by decluttering and reward yourself for a job well done to maintain motivation. Classic stuff, of course, in terms of any task, any goal that we set, reward. Good idea. Clean in the morning to start your day with a sense of accomplishment, and establish a cleaning routine for consistency. So once more, we have that echo to Admiral McRaven, which is nice to see. So if more than one author, thought expert is saying the same thing, then to me, that's a good sign. So let's then go just to a couple of caveats in here about tidying and clutter. Because it is possible that one of the reasons someone is not tidying, there is a lot of clutter, there's a lot of chaos, it could be their mental health. So what we've talked about in terms of mental health so far is how it can impact our mental health. But of course, it could be our mental health that is causing us not, or someone else, not to be able to tackle certain things. And therefore, once more, I would suggest it is so important to reach out. If you're struggling, if your environment is reflecting how you're feeling and it's disorganized, it's demotivated, then speak to someone, at least a friend and or someone professional. Could be, for example, depression. That can happen in depression. Could be other things that are going on. Something else you'll see here from the DSM-5, hoarding disorder. Relatively unusual, but let's just mention it. So persistent difficulty discarding or parting with possessions regardless of their actual value. And this difficulty is due to a perceived need to save the items and to the distress associated with discarding them. The difficulty discarding possessions results in the accumulation of possessions that congest and clutter active living areas and substantially compromises their intended use. If living areas are uncluttered, it is only because of the interventions of third parties, e.g. family members, cleaners or the authorities. The hoarding causes clinically significant distress or impairment in social, occupational or other important areas of functioning, including maintaining a safe environment, safe for oneself or others. The hoarding is not attributable to other medical conditions, brain injury, cerebrovascular disease, Prader-Willi syndrome. And something else, which, well, for the sake of completeness, I keep on saying, let's learn as we go along. Let's expand our horizons. Diogenes syndrome, you may or may not have heard of. It says here from this article, identification and distinction from hoarding disorder. And Diogenes syndrome, well, it's misnamed if you know your mythology. Diogenes wasn't a hoarder, but anyway. So the current Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders 5, DSM-5, that we just talked about, does not list Diogenes syndrome as a psychiatric condition. However, it includes the closely related condition hoarding disorder. Diogenes is distinct from hoarding disorder with the presence of squalor and neglect. And the reason I'm putting that there is because that distinction, the squalor element, the neglect element, is what can differentiate it. And once more, when there is neglect and there's squalor, the individual, in my opinion, definitely needs help. And once more, you may be thinking, well, but hold on a second, that other thing was in the DSM-5, and this isn't, does it mean that it's less important? No, it doesn't at all. It's just to do with well, there's a long history, but it's to do with the way that the DSMs, the manuals, have been put together, and they are updated, and there's constant discussion going on about how we categorize things. But I thought that might be worth mentioning. And so, if you are looking around and thinking, should I tackle that job, that tidying, that creating order in your environment, my advice is yes, definitely. There are times when I don't and times when I do, and when I do, things just seem to be better. There are, of course, lots of other things that go on in our lives that can make us feel a bit stressed and edgy and miserable, but at least that's something that most of us can tackle. And of course, if you're looking around and thinking, I just can't do it, I can't face it, then definitely speak to someone, please. And if you know someone who is hoarding, without pointing a finger at them and causing more stress or being judgmental and stigmatizing, then it could be worth having a conversation or maybe speaking to someone who is a professional in that area to get some advice about it, because it could be hoarding disorder. It could also be the Diogenes syndrome at play. Anyway, so there we are. I think that those are some of the reasons that tidying is important, and those are some of the reasons that when these let's say, public speakers, well-known public figures talk about it, that it resonates with most of us. And I would finish off by saying that I think there's something quite primal about it, in the sense that humans are tribal by nature and existed in tribes, existed in places, sometimes caves, of course, as we know, where they had to get along. What did they have to do? They had to defend. They had to keep it habitable, so warm enough, cool enough, keep it safe for younger people, babies, children, and of course adults. So something that's lying around that you could trip over, or something that needed to be disposed of because it was a health hazard, or something that was potentially confusing, particularly at night time, because of a shape and the way the fire caused the shadows to bounce would cause us distress. We need areas, we always have needed areas that are clean, tidy, not threatening. And that's why I think for a lot of us, we need the cave, welcoming and safe, away from the lions, tigers and bears. Oh my.